Okay, so Revolut have been making waves lately with a series of major changes, shaking up everything from their UK banking license to the perks that many of us have come to rely on.
Interesting to see you applying for this UK banking license.
But while the banking license might grab headlines, the real story lies in the unexpected shifts, like the end of cashback and the full rollout of RevPoints. These moves have left some users less than thrilled. And then there's the surprising overhaul of Revolut Premium. Travel insurance gone, SmartDelay also gone. This is a big deal, but while Premium may have taken a hit, Metal and Ultra are getting upgraded. So in today's video, we're going to talk about all of that. But before we dive in, a quick favor, if you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing. Believe it or not, 98% of our viewers aren't subscribed, which is slightly concerning. So if you'd like to support myself and the channel and keep me in a job, then please consider hitting subscribe. Now let's kick things off with RevPoints, which has stirred up quite a bit of controversy. And I'll assume you're already up to speed, but if not, just think Avios. This is basically a points for spending system, and depending on your tier, you'll earn a certain amount for every pound you spend. You can also earn points for lots of other stuff, such as spending and budgeting. I don't know, you can get it for booking accommodation or experiences, and even for linking external bank accounts. So RevPoints is also a great indication of what Revolut would like us to be doing with our accounts. But why has this been so controversial? Or at least in the eyes of some online, which we should remember is usually where people go the fastest to complain. Well, firstly, cashback at Revolut at times has been very lucrative. For example, when they first launched Ultra, you could earn 5%, and when Revolut Stays originally went live, you could earn 10%, and there wasn't a cap. So you could book thousands of dollars worth of hotels and get a decent discount. Then there was also cashback to be earned on spending, not only for everyday transactions, but also at specific retailers. And this at times was very generous. I still remember when I first moved into my new house, Revolut had 5% at John Lewis, and there was no limit. So I bought everything from the TV stand to the toilet brush. Now, truth be told, I probably bought a much fancier toilet brush than I needed, but you can't overlook 5% cashback, especially when it's uncapped. Then there were the gift cards. With the Metal plan, I was getting up to 4%. So instead of having to buy actual presents for people that I didn't like, I just bought them gift cards. And hopefully they're not watching this video. So over the years, cashback at Revolut has been really enticing, and a big reason why I and a lot of others use the platform, so you can understand why some people will be frustrated by its removal. Cashback is also really just very easy to quantify. If we use Revolut Stays as an example, if I get 10%, I just have to move a decimal point and I know how much I'm going to earn. But when you introduce points and I don't know, there are multipliers and different earning tiers, things get a little confusing. Of course, in typical Revolut fashion, they've made it very easy to understand. And if you tap the lifestyle tab and then the top right-hand corner, you get this page, which gives you a decent overview of how much you're earning and how to redeem. And this does help us understand and see the value, but ultimately it'll never be as easy as visualizing what you can spend your cashback on. If you have like a couple pounds, you know you can buy a loaf of bread, or in this economy, a slice, and maybe eventually get the whole loaf. Points arguably require more imagination. And you can see how people would be left thinking, what the hell am I actually meant to do with these? Like, how do I buy stuff? Well, Revolut has the answer to that, and it's called Revolut Pay. So this is something that businesses can integrate into their checkout, and like Apple and Google Pay, it's geared towards making the buying experience for consumers as convenient and fast as possible, while also improving conversion rates for businesses. Now, this is relevant because if a company has Revolut Pay integrated, then we can check out using our RevPoints. So when I click Revolut Pay, I'm redirected to this page where I can see how many points I have, what they're worth, and also how much I would be earning for this transaction. As you can see, 1 point is worth 1p. And so if I'm an Ultra customer and I'm earning £1 per point, I'm getting 1% cashback and with no cap, which is pretty good. Also, and quite importantly, this gives us something tangible that we can attribute to our RevPoints. But is that going to be enough to calm the minds of those frustrated by the removal of cashback? Because ultimately it is a big change, and some people just don't like that. Back when I was at university and not asleep, I remember the Kubler-Ross change curve. Now, this was originally used in psychiatry, but we can loosely apply it to this because it refers to the emotional journey people go through whenever there's significant change. And this is exactly that. Revolut is evolving, and some people who have probably used the platform for a long time are experiencing frustration, but I'm convinced they will see the value, especially because there are now so many more ways you can earn than there was with cashback. And eventually, once they start to accumulate and begin to redeem their points for air miles, experiences, or clothes, then it's inevitable that they'll arrive at the acceptance phase. And if you're thinking about upgrading to Metal or Ultra, then you're really positioned to benefit. You could earn a lot of RevPoints, and not only because you get more points per pound, but because you get a bigger welcome bonus. And before RevPoints, Revolut weren't giving people cash for upgrading or signing up to these plans. I know the founding Ultra customers received 5% cash back for the first month, but that was temporary. And when it came to earning from everyday spending, both Metal and Ultra's cashback was pretty underwhelming. If I remember correctly, I think you could earn 1% on transactions outside the EEA and 0.1% inside, which is obviously better than a cold cup of tea, like it's still cashback, but that's definitely nowhere near as good as 1 point per pound, which you now get with Ultra. Although that does unfortunately mean that the value is more prevalent in the higher tiers, but that's okay because you shouldn't upgrade to Ultra just to earn 1 point per pound, because there are obviously more rewarding cards. You probably don't need me to tell you that Amex has a rewards credit card with no fees, or that Chase UK does 1% cashback. And if you're someone that just wants to earn rewards from spending alone and doesn't need the advantages of Revolut's products or financial features, then those are good places to look. But if you can take advantage of Metal and Ultra, so that means not only using them for your everyday spending, but really making use of their perks, then you'll be seriously rewarded. Because the more entrenched you are and committed to using Revolut's ecosystem, then the more rewarded you'll be. And for the right person, the higher tier plans are an absolute bargain. But you have to ask yourself, and this is the most important thing, can you make use of the subscriptions or partner benefits? The FT Digital, WeWork, ClassPass, those are some of the original ones since Ultra launched, and they contribute a lot of the value. But recently, Revolut have added 2 more, Masterclass and Chess.com. Although Metal does have a slightly limited version of both, but if we put these benefits into my somewhat estimated value calculator, we can see that they bump the annual value to almost £1,500 and £4,000. And remember, Metal in the UK is around 180 a year and Ultra is 540. So that's a huge potential return on investment. Now, Revolut have their own estimation for Ultra, which they say is over $4,000, but that includes other perks and not just the partnerships, which clearly hold the majority of the value. Other perks include heavily discounted or free international transfers, unlimited airport lounge access, and even 3 gigabytes of global roaming data through one of Revolut's eSIMs. This on its own is a great benefit, and you don't have to be a frequent traveler to know that carriers or mobile networks try to rip us off for using our data abroad, and eSIMs are a great way to avoid this. They're very affordable and also very simple to use. And if you're not an Ultra customer and you want to get yourself an eSIM, then I highly recommend using our new comparison engine. Just enter a few details and we'll compare thousands of plans to tell you which will be the cheapest and the best for your trip. I'll put a link in the description box. It'll only take you a few seconds to use, and it will probably save you a lot of money. Now, what I find the most interesting about this value is just how much it's changed since Ultra first launched. So last year, I calculated the value to be around £2,500 annually, or $205 per month. But due to inflation, so providers increasing their prices, and also the addition of Turo, Headway, The Athletic, and now Masterclass and Chess.com, the value has increased dramatically, but the price hasn't changed, at least for Ultra. And that might be because it's relatively new and the price may eventually go up. But for now, these accounts at their price point, particularly with Ultra and all of its value, topped off with RevPoints, are absolutely unbeatable. Can you tell me if there's anything like this? Please, because I'm struggling to find an alternative that's a debit card and as rewarding as using Revolut. And they always seem to be improving it and evolving, which is something I actually said in my original Ultra review. And that's why very frequent travelers could really benefit from Ultra, as long as you can make use of those subscriptions, which I'm convinced we'll see more of in the future, because right now Ultra does feel a bit incomplete. I think there's more to come, and Revolut will continue to improve, and the value of Ultra will increase even further, which will hopefully trickle down, and not just to Metal, but also Premium. Because unfortunately, Premium right now feels a bit like Jon Snow, unloved and banished to the wall in the depths of winter. And now is probably the right time to say that Revolut Premium is no longer my travel companion, because Premium no longer has travel insurance. So you may have also received this email back in June. It announced the arrival of RevPoints and some useful insurance benefits, such as the addition of jewelry and watches to everyday purchase protection, as well as the removal of excess when claiming for certain items, such as phones. Those are pretty awesome, but don't forget that's only for stuff you paid for using your Revolut account, which makes sense, after all, it's called purchase protection. But does it make sense that this now applies to your travel? So travel insurance is now only available with Metal and Ultra, and to be covered, you must have paid at least 75% with your Revolut account. This wasn't necessary before, so make sure to bear that in mind, because otherwise you risk your cover being void. It's also probably best that you make sure you're fully up to date with these documents, because there may be other changes that you're not aware of. Personally, I'm sad about the removal of travel insurance, especially because it was just one less thing that I had to worry about. SmartDelay, which is also now gone from Premium, I'm less sad about. So if you're not familiar, basically if your flight is delayed, you register it on the app, and if it goes beyond an hour, you're then issued a lounge pass. But for me, my delays were never long enough, except one time when it did cross an hour, but before I had the chance to use the pass, the flight began boarding. So I never really got to make use of it. Obviously, a lack of usage is not why they removed it. Okay, so I'm currently editing this video, and I've realized that SmartDelay has also been removed from Metal and Ultra. At least here in the UK, because as far as I can tell, I'm looking at the Revolut US website and it looks like it's still available in America, but I can't see any reference to it anywhere on Revolut's European websites. And at this point in the video, I now want to discuss with you why I think SmartDelay was removed from Premium. But shockingly, I think this also applies to Metal and Ultra. I think SmartDelay for Premium was costing too much money. And this is a crazy statistic, but in the UK, 34% of people who flew last year were either delayed or had their flights cancelled. That's a third of travelers, which is insane. And delays have become such a part of life that when we go to the airport, we just expect our flights to be late. And unless we see a dramatic drop in the number of people traveling, I think delays will just get worse and worse. There are constant staff shortages at air traffic agencies, and they seem to always be on strike, particularly in France, which hammers the UK airports. So Revolut are probably having to give out more and more lounge passes, and as a perk for a plan that costs only $7.99 per month in the UK, this is likely not sustainable. Some users of Premium were probably costing Revolut a lot more in lounge passes than they were generating, and so when you stretch that cost across the whole subset of Premium users, it was probably having a negative impact on their balance sheet. I suppose this could have been the same reason for travel insurance. Perhaps it just wasn't financially viable at the Premium price point, but I think that's a real shame. I personally would have paid more for Premium just to get the insurance, as I don't really want to commit to Metal, at least not right now. Then again, you now have to pay 75% of your booking with your account, which is a bit off-putting, especially if you're someone that wants to use a credit card to book flights and accommodation. And with the removal of both of these perks, Premium really just has one major flagship feature remaining, and that's the fee-free currency exchange during the week. Now, this is still fantastic. Revolut uses great exchange rates that are on par with the mid-market, and the closest somewhat alternative is Wise and their multi-currency account, but they do charge small fees each time you exchange. And in most cases, at least during the week, Revolut will probably be the best option for exchanging money. But is that on its own enough to make Premium worth $7.99 a month? I'm not so sure. With Wise, you can exchange around £2,000 to euros or US dollars before being charged more than $7.99 in fees. So that means if you're exchanging less than that a month, then you may want to consider downgrading to Plus, which has a monthly fee-free limit of £3,000. But if you want to continue using Premium, but you're not exchanging that much, then just make sure you're making use of the partner benefits. So that means using NordVPN, ordering Deliveroo, or going on as many dates as possible. And if you get your heart broken, just use Headspace to restore your mental health. To be fair, Premium does still have its benefits, and you also get increased savings rates as well as discounted commodity trading fees, which could be useful, but that is very niche. And I think there's a small chance we could see an overhaul of Premium. Perhaps it could merge with Plus and at the same time get a couple extra benefits. I'd love to see travel insurance brought back in, maybe even just a regressed version, perhaps single trip cover, which you could use a couple times a year. And that way Revolut is still signaling that Premium is a plan for someone that travels, but also making Metal look more appealing because you'd need to upgrade to get more comprehensive insurance. My opinion is that Premium needs more travel benefits beyond fee-free currency exchange because I fear that Revolut will lose people that used it as a travel companion. But while that may happen, Revolut will make up for any losses by gaining a lot of UK customers thanks to their new preliminary banking license. So by now I'm sure you've heard about this, but I do have a full video on the story which I'll link below if you want to learn more. But the TLDR is that Revolut have entered the mobilization phase, or what's known as authorized with restriction. This is normally where a newly licensed bank build their operations and strengthen their management, and this usually happens right at the beginning of their conception. And they would be given a long list of difficult conditions and restrictions before they can become fully licensed. That's why this phase is called authorized with restriction. And a very interesting restriction is that a bank with a preliminary license can only hold up to £50,000 worth of deposits. Now that's 0.00027% of Revolut's total global customer deposits, which is kind of like giving Boeing a license to operate paper airplanes. It's an absurd restriction for a global company, and it just highlights how cautious and restrictive the whole licensing process is, and it still isn't even a guarantee that Revolut are going to get it. At this stage, the FCA, or Financial Conduct Authority, will be more involved, and they'll be looking closely at Revolut's customers and how they conduct themselves, basically looking for any suspicious activity. Then there's the PRA, another regulator who's responsible for issuing the license. They'll be looking more closely at their risk management and IT systems, which have had reported issues in the past. And this was a very interesting news development. Basically back in 2021, their US payment system started bugging out, and thieves realized that when transactions were declined, Revolut would fund their account with the value of the transaction. So as you can imagine, that only encouraged people to try and make very expensive purchases, which would be declined, and the money then funded into their accounts. Those thieves would then go and cash out via ATMs. Eventually, Revolut were able to fix this and recuperate some of the money, and it was back in 2021. So I imagine since then they've made some serious upgrades. But the PRA will be looking into this, and they'll be examining their payment system pretty thoroughly. So it is possible that they might not be approved. Generally speaking though, and from what I've read, getting to this point is the hardest part of the process, and given how established they are in their banking experience, I'm pretty sure they'll get fully licensed, and maybe even before the end of the year. Right now though, for UK customers, nothing changes, and most importantly, that means that our money remains protected through e-money safeguarding and not FSCS protection. And I think that's important to mention because if you're specifically looking for this type of deposit insurance, then it won't apply until they exit the mobilization phase and become a fully fledged bank. But once that does happen, we can almost guarantee that we'll see a lot of new products launching, and one has already launched in the UK, which I think is related to the license. Customers can now deposit cash. And it's really smart. You can easily find a deposit location, and then you just get a barcode that they use to scan, and you can deposit your money. And Revolut have said that they'll be rolling this out to other countries in Europe. But this isn't obviously why they got a UK banking license. The real value is going to be in offering credit or borrowing products such as overdrafts, loans, and credit cards, and eventually the holy grail in lending, mortgages. And I totally overlooked this when the license was first granted, but Revolut's UK CEO, Francesca Carlisi, before joining, founded a very successful and well-known digital mortgage lender called Molo. Now, at the time, I remember highlighting that she'd worked at Deutsche and Barclays, and I felt that this hire was to give Revolut more authority and experience in banking, which it probably was, but now I think of it more as a genius move towards building a mortgage product. Nikolai Storonsky must have felt quite confident that they'd eventually get their license, and with Francesca already in place and at the helm, they could immediately begin to build their digital mortgage platform. And so she'll be bringing to Revolut a ton of knowledge and experience of what's necessary to pull that off. So that means tech, credit strategy, and all of the compliance required that Revolut will need. And I think you can guarantee that this will be at the forefront of their future banking roadmap. I'll personally be remortgaging in 2028, so you never know, I might be able to bring you a full Monito review and personal experience of Revolut mortgages. That would be fun. We'll definitely be following the developments of this UK license and anything else related to Revolut, so make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up to date. And if you have any thoughts on what we've discussed, then drop me a comment below. It's always great to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.